Bitcoin is at an extremely key level right now. So as investors, it is time to prepare and get our watch list ready and start looking at the altcoins that we want to potentially accumulate to take advantage of potential upside. And of course, if Bitcoin does get a breakdown here, we also need to know what are the coins that are A, going to hold up the best, and 2, going to provide the best opportunities for potential accumulation. So in today's show, I'm of course going to be going over the charts and explaining to you guys where I think we currently sit, but I'm also going to be going through the strongest narratives that I'm seeing in the market and the strongest coins in each one of those narratives to help you position a potential watch list to take advantage of upside if it comes. It's important as investors to be prepared, and I am going to give you some levels that I'm looking at buying some of these altcoins today and also looking at some potential trade opportunities. So make sure you smash the likes if you're here. Thank you to everyone that joined on Sunday. We had an amazing stream where I streamed for 6 hours and we unpacked some absolute gems. Some of them ended up pumping. Some of our trades ended up not working out, but it was all a whole lot of fun. And yeah, I really enjoyed hanging out with you guys then. So shout out to the ones that watched then and are back today. But today we have some major updates because it has been a wild week. We've had multiple retests of the 25K region and we keep getting rejected from this level. But in my opinion, as long as Bitcoin can continue to exhibit bullish momentum within this range, as you can see, we can draw the trend line up here. We continue to make higher lows. As long as we continue to knock on the door of 25K, the likelihood of us breaking 25K becomes higher and higher and higher. And we know above 25K, we have those higher price targets towards the 26 to the 28K region that can come very, very quick. But the important thing to note is that there is a massive sell wall that is constantly rejecting Bitcoin every time it hits 25K. And there is a lot of shorts loading. So that means, of course, if Bitcoin can break above, then you could potentially see some sort of short squeeze where the price rapidly ascends due to the amount of shorts being potentially liquidated. But then you also have a scenario where, look, it becomes very, very hard to break, and it's going to need a little bit of a catalyst, maybe some sort of news push to get that explosive breakthrough. So it is a critical moment for the Bitcoin price at the moment. And I would say heading into a week, which is quite important with CPI or FOMC, the latest FOMC press conference coming out tomorrow, then on Friday getting PCE data, and then a whole lot of political tensions with Russia, Ukraine, etc. There's certainly a lot of stuff that can move this market for the better or for the worse. So it's important as investors to keep our eye on the market right now, and I will give you a plan for how I'm potentially looking at accumulating some altcoins, because since we're in an uptrend, for me, dips are still for buying until we get full invalidation of the trend. And obviously that would result in, firstly, the break of this diagonal here. And then secondly, the break of the 23.3 region. That would start to invalidate at least my short 2 to 3 week thesis. Unless we get that, then I am looking at taking advantage of dips solely because I want to position myself for a potential breakout. Remember, I trade with less than probably 10% of my total crypto portfolio, so you have to weight it accordingly. But I'm certainly not going all in right now. I'm certainly not accumulating long-term crazy spot bags right now. I'm solely trying to narrative trade and take advantage of not only the hot coins in the market, but a potential move to the upside. So let's have a look in the shorter term how Bitcoin could potentially move. I think the first thing that I'm looking at is the DXY. So we know the dollar index being adversely correlated to Bitcoin is an extremely important metric to observe. And we can see that we're currently approaching a pretty strong resistance on the dollar. And if the dollar does get rejected here, then I think that may give Bitcoin some fuel to push up towards its range high. Now, of course, the FOMC is going to have a big say in terms of how the DXY moves in terms of price. However, we can see we're approaching resistance, and although we may push up a little bit to the 104.5 region, which may result in a tiny bit more downside for Bitcoin, then the DXY, it would take a lot of strength to push above this 105 region. So that is something to keep your eye on. If a rejection happens there, that's very good. And then also the thing I'm keeping my eye on is the Bitcoin dominance, which looks to be making an inverse head and shoulders pattern right now. So we see the left shoulder coming up here in the dominance, which saw a spike of up to 45%. Then we saw a drawdown, which resulted in the head of the pattern being etched, which came in at 43%. And then we saw the right shoulder at 44%. And now it looks like we're getting that second dip. So dominance also approaching, and if we get rid of this pattern here, you'll see it more clearly, approaching key resistance. Now, of course, it can flip resistance into support, and then that would result in, probably a broader market correction as Bitcoin increases versus alts. However, we are currently at a huge resistance point for dominance, and if this pattern does play out, then we can see a breakdown and another leg to the downside. So that is something that I'm keeping my eye on, because let's say dominance starts to really break down here, and then we get a retest of this key level, and then we start making our way to the downside. That is my indicator that I want to start getting more heavy into alts. For now, I'm just going slowly, small DCAs, positioning myself in some coins that I think are undervalued, taking it pretty easy. But when we start seeing those signs, which is obviously the push up and the consolidation above range high for Bitcoin, also in tandem with what is likely going to be a bearish retest for Bitcoin dominance and then a push to the downside, that's my signal to start going heavier on alts, just to give you an idea of my plan. But I am starting to position myself slowly but surely in during some of these dips to make sure I have adequate exposure. If we do hit our upside targets, I don't want to be left completely out of the market. So that's what today's video is about, identifying some of the strongest narratives and trades. So the first thing I want to do is go over 2 altcoin trades. And then after that, I'll go into some of the more narrative-based stuff based on, of course, the China altcoins, which have been ripping, some of the, ZK stuff, which has been performing strongly, give you some updates on my plans there with some price targets. The first thing I want to talk about is, of course, MATIC, because they did have massive layoffs yesterday, which caused a lot of FUD and did result in the MATIC price coming down 12 to 14%. Now, Polygon's had obviously insane growth over the last couple of years, not only in its ecosystem development, but also in its amount of developers, its amount of staff, its biz dev team. It's just been growing and growing and growing. And I think it got to the point where they just could not sustain a rapid increase in continuous hiring of fresh labor and fresh capital. And they ended up making the decision to start to withdraw some of that labor that they had acquired. So Polygon did decide to lay off 20% of their staff, which obviously isn't a good sign, because it means that they are either A, projecting some sort of downturn financially, or B, overhired in the first place. And as a big company, that's something you never want to do. So obviously it's not a good sign, but some of the FUD on Twitter, I think, was maybe a little bit overblown, because this is pretty normal for this stage in the economic cycle. I mean, we're seeing Facebook make layoffs, we're seeing Amazon make layoffs, Google make layoffs. Apple haven't yet, but that's something that may come. So for a Web3 company, which is facing probably more headwinds, like every Web3 company versus traditional tech, it does make sense. But I sort of think it's all doom and gloom. So in terms of this pullback, it is one considering MATIC's relative strength in recent times, its relation to the ZK narrative, that I am looking at buying. We did have on the daily that huge breakout above range high at $1.30. That was obviously our first indicator that, okay, MATIC is definitely in a bull trend and this has potential upside targets towards the $2 region. So going into like the 4-hourly chart, now that we know we've confirmed above range high, we can start buying these confirmation dips. So the first dip probably comes in at the 134 to 136 region, to 137. It depends, how you want to personally play it. Of course, the more leverage you use, the more picky you're going to have to be on your dip buying. Like if you want to buy spot, you can ladder in. I don't have any problems with that. It's much less risky, or using even 2-3x leverage, it's much less risky than if you're going with a 10x leverage long. Then you have to be aware that, we can come down and test range highs, and then you'll get stopped out or get liquidated if that is the case. So if you're using super high leverage, I wouldn't start building a huge position now at 138, 137. You can consider laddering in though. If you're more on the spot side of things. And then, of course, once we go back down to range highs, if that does happen, it doesn't always happen. We don't always get full corrections, but if we do get the luxury of a full correction here on MATIC, then, of course, I will look to maybe make some more buys at 130, and then I'll have my stop probably in the 125 region, because that's in validation of the thesis, which is a higher time frame breakout of the 130 region, which has those upwards price targets. So that's my plan with MATIC. Of course, MATIC does have ZK EVM coming on March 27th, so there's lots to be excited about in the MATIC ecosystem. Solana's an interesting one. I did take a breakout long here, got stopped out. So the first actual breakout was invalidated, which is okay because you don't always get it on the first time. But I do think on the second or third attempt here, Solana does have significant upside. So we do have those targets of $38 to $40, and then on the higher end, $48 to $50 of upside if we get a successful breakout. What do I mean by a successful breakout? Well, there's 3 key things right now, and they're all in confluence. So this is a really, really, really important time for Solana. There is, firstly, the 200 MA on the daily as you guys know, one of my favorite indicators that we are currently bouncing off. You can see if we zoom in on the daily chart, we are getting a bounce. It's extremely fickle times for Solana. So there's a big decision to make at the moment. If we get a bounce and a consolidation above this diagonal trend, that would also be bullish confirmation. So you see this trend or almost this like price channel we've been in since May, continuously making, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs, lower highs. That is starting to break out, or at least, attempting to break out. It did get rejected on the first attempt. And then, of course, you also have this very, very key horizontal level at $25 to $26, which we got previously rejected at. We had a fake out, and then we went back into the channel. That is a very key level to break as well. So for me, if Solana breaks all three of these indicators and retests, then that is a bullish sign. That's an indicator that, we can start laddering into positions. And I may even look to ladder into a position of the initial breakout of this diagonal, because, we have two of our three indicators at that point that are starting to tick bullish, the 200 MA and the diagonal. So yeah, this one's hard because if you're using super high leverage, there can be multiple rejections. So I would probably go in with slightly, I wouldn't highly leverage trade this. Maybe it's like a decent spot zone, maybe just like a 3 to 5x leverage zone. Look, it all depends on your risk tolerance, how you trade, of course. You guys know I have different allocations for my long-term portfolio and different allocations for my short-term portfolio. And my short-term portfolio is like sub 10% of my long-term. So theoretically, if I get wiped out day trading, it shouldn't affect the long-term stuff too much. So you have to make sure you keep that adequate balance. And if you're starting to get a little bit too short-term and overexposed in the short term, then maybe you want to look at repositioning the time frames on your holds if Solana's a project that you like holding long term. So it really depends on your scenario in terms of how you go in with size and leverage on a trade like this. And I would never suggest anyone goes too stupid. But, definitely there is pretty strong upside price potential for Solana if we do get a confirmed breakout here. So that is definitely something that I'm looking at. Remember, if you do want to trade, you can do so on OKX. If you trade, you get a chance to, if you just sign up for an account, deposit $50, you get a chance to open one of these mystery boxes. Technically, you can win up to $10,000, although as we can see here, this guy only got $5. So the chance of you winning 10K is pretty low, but there's still a tiny, tiny chance. So if you do want to, I guess, try your luck on a mystery box, there's a link in the description. And of course, it's also a great exchange to trade on. Just a reminder as well, there's only 8 days to go in the Rolex giveaway. So if you're not involved with that, that's over on Bybit and BitGet. All you have to do is sign up for a link in the description. Make sure you're in the Discord and open a trade. So if you open a trade, that's one entry, 100 trades, 100 entries, etc. You guys know the drill. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now, but thought I'd just remind you with 8 days to go that is still the case. So links in the description to BitGet or Bybit if you want the Rolex giveaway, and of course, OKX for the mystery box. Let's get on with some of the hot narratives that I'm looking at potentially accumulating during these dips. And this isn't really a massive dip. The first thing I want to say is, look, I see a lot of people get very overwhelmed in terms of, 2 to 3% corrections or 2 to 3% pumps in this market. But, we do have to take a step back and just realize these swings in the scheme of things are extremely small. Like, we had this massive move up from 21K all the way to 25K. That is realistically quite a big move. That's a 16% move. What we're seeing at the moment, they're not big moves at all. We're actually consolidating right below the range high, and they're only really 2% swings. So anyone that's changing their thesis and going super bullish on one day as we approach 25, and then super bearish on the next day as we go back to 24.4, that in my opinion, that's very irrational, because the percentage moves are actually quite small. And we do typically know that consolidation does lead to big breakouts. Like, if we contextualize this on the daily chart, we can see, this is just bound to break out to one side or the other. So of course, the altcoins that I'm going to be talking about now, they're the ones that you want to keep your eye on if we break to the upside, because the strongest narratives in the market at the end of the day, they're going to outperform. If Bitcoin breaks 25, consolidates, and then looks for those upside targets, 26 to 28K, then of course the strongest narratives, they're going to be the ones that perform, and they're the ones we'll look at today. But similarly, if we break down, you don't want to be exposed to the laggards. You don't want to be exposed to the projects that are potentially going to have huge downside. So it's a fine line. You have to kind of get the balance right, and look for coins that have you're getting at a good level after a retrace and not buying into a huge pump, and B, have enough catalyst to underpin some sort of demand so you don't get completely wiped out on a rejection. But look, if we do break get rejected and then actually have a full Bitcoin breakdown, then we do have invalidation levels. This isn't just a long and strong thesis forever, because there is a chance we get negative news this week and we do break down. So that's why, for me, this is a DCA approach. I have my multiple horizontals where I DCA. Of course, I'd love us to hold in this range here, get some DCAs in around the 24 to 24.5 region. But then you've also got the 24 region and the 23 region as decent zones to look at laddering in. And then, of course, we did have the previous range that we were in between 22.3 and 23.2, which still could technically hold. Like, I'm not ruling out the possibility that, we do break down. Let's just say this is something we do. We come down, we test, we have some fake outs, we bounce, we get sucked in, and then we come back into this range. Although that technically is not what we want to see, and that significantly reduces the likelihood of a short-term breakout past 25K, technically that can be consolidation before a next wave to the upside. So you do have to have a plan where, okay, I'm not all in on alts because I need cash for if we come down to try my luck there. Because we can always go lower, and there's no reason to ape in when we're essentially approaching resistance, right? So always have enough cash on the side to take advantage of dips. That's always my number one tip in this market. So, okay, if your plan is to buy dips, if that's your thesis, or if your thesis is, and I think this is equally as valid, to wait for a break of range high and then on consolidation start looking at accumulating some of the strongest altcoins. What are those strongest altcoins? That's really our question that we have to answer right now. I did a thread on this the other day, but I want to give you guys a little more insight into some of the strongest ones in this thread, and then give you price levels for some of these projects. The first one's ZK. I think with Polygon ZK EVM launch in late March, then heading into ZK Sync's token launch, then heading into Starknet's token launch. Although a lot of these ZK protocols have run and maybe run disproportionately, I think there is still room here, especially in a bullish market, for ZK to continue to outperform. So there's two that are on my list. I think MINA fundamentally is one of the strongest. So this is one of them. We can see in terms of price action that we currently have had a very nice pullback, a nice healthy correction. So to all of you that wanted to ape in at 120, I think this is a good thing. We can start to FOMO a little bit less. And start to look at some really nice entries. Of course, I would love to see this hold 95 cents. Potentially, this is an okay DCA zone, but realistically, the 84 cent level is going to be probably a higher risk reward zone, because that was the previous high in November pre-FTX. So that is a very key level that I'm looking at on MINA. IMX as well. I mean, you've got multiple. You've got Dusk, you've got LRC, you've got Syscoin. At the end of the day, you've got to pick your favorites from each narrative. I'm just giving you a couple of mine. I do like IMX because it has kind of multiple narratives behind it. It runs off the ZK narrative. It's L2 as well. And it's also gaming. So if gaming catches a bid, this can run in the context of gaming as well, which is kind of why I like it. I like projects that expose themselves to multiple potential catalysts, which I think IMX has. Currently getting rejected on the daily off this level. I am now seeing a pullback to the 93 cent level. So that's where I'd start getting more interested in IMX. Like, a lot of these protocols, they've run up significantly. So we want to wait for the cool off before we look at any sort of long entry. Of course, like, big cool off or big breakout, one or the other. You don't want to get trapped in no man's land. So that's the level I'm looking at on IMX. The second narrative I'm looking at is LSD, so liquid staking derivatives. I still think there's two major catalysts for this narrative. There's one, the upcoming Shanghai upgrade, and there's two, the SEC regulatory crackdown on centralized staking. Now, the market is not completely fading point number two yet. Of course, this was last week's big news, and now everyone seems to forget about it. But in terms of price action of a lot of these projects, you can tell that the market hasn't forgotten. The first reason why we can tell the market hasn't forgotten is because of Ethereum. Ethereum's price action has been shit. I'll be completely honest. It hasn't been as good as Bitcoin. It looks a lot weaker than Bitcoin on the retest, and it's dumped harder on the rejections as well. So Ethereum's price action does not look as good as Bitcoin, and I think that is because there are some concerns related to the SEC crackdown. So the market hasn't really forgotten, and although, like, I love Ethereum long term, it's my biggest long term position, and of course it's a token that tends to lead alts and I like to trade. ETH doesn't have the relative strength right now. And that just goes to show, I think the market is pricing in some of this regulatory stuff still into the market, because it's still an ongoing concern. We don't know when the next SEC headline is going to come out. So given the context of the regulatory crackdown, given the context of the upcoming Shanghai upgrade, which will allow redemptions on the beacon chain for stake derivatives, I think the liquid staking market is going to continue to be a strong one. And there's two projects in this narrative. First, you've got FRAX. As I mentioned with IMX, I love altcoins that have multiple catalysts. FRAX obviously has that decentralized stablecoin catalyst. So with BUSD's Paxos sanction, and also with some of the rumors around Circle and USDT, I think we need decentralized stablecoins. So you've got, Curve USD stablecoin coming, 𝗧𝗿𝗱𝗏𝗍 stablecoin coming. They're obviously ones I'm excited for, but they're upcoming. Right now, you've already got FRAX, and this is why I like FRAX in tandem with the strong growth it's seen in the LSD sector. I think they've been the fastest growing ETH staking derivative on the markets. That's one reason why I've got my eye on FRAX. Now, FRAX actually is a good one to trade. Why is it a good one to trade? Because we have a very clear range. In fact, too much of a clear range. So FRAX, I know this is FXS, this is FRAX share, but stop acting like your brother or sister FRAX the stablecoin, because that's exactly how it's been trading at the moment. Instead of being pegged to $1, it's pegged to $10. So we're seeing this clear range for FRAX, but to be honest, it does make it easy to trade, because you buy the bottom of the range and you sell the top of the range, or at least you accumulate on the bottom of the range and then you de-risk on the top of the range. If you've traded with leverage, then de-risking makes more sense than spot. But yeah, we did have a deviation above. This deviation happened when the news broke around the BUSD stablecoin. But apart from that deviation, very, very clear range with tests all the way back since early January, or mid-January, and then a continuation of consolidation here. So what I would do in terms of FRAX, and this is actually what I'm personally doing, of course, none of this is financial advice. You have to make your own investment decisions. I can just tell you what I'm interested in. I may be an idiot, but this is just what I'm doing. I'm looking at accumulating FRAX between 9.6 and 9.9. So just under $10. I think we're in a decent pocket because you do have confluence of the horizontal, which is at 9.5. So if you could get an entry right at the bottom there, that's great, because then you could set your stop below potentially. But if you're buying spot, it doesn't really matter as much. And also you do have potentially, and I say potentially because this trend line isn't very developed yet, but potentially another higher low coming in. And this would result in a bounce of around the 9.6 region if we do come down over the next couple days. So we're getting closer with my FRAX entry, but I don't really want to buy mid-range. Buying mid-range is like a recipe for disaster, because either we pump to the top of the range, I make money, or I instantly am down like 5% because we go to the bottom of the range. So I'd like to make a confirmation bet at the bottom of the FRAX range. And then Lido's the exact same. Except it has had extreme deviation above its previous range high, because it's just had more relative strength, being slightly more synonymous with the Shanghai upgrade and the LSD narrative than FRAX is. So I think the Lido is still a great project, and this is one of my long-term positions as well. But in the short term, I think still has some upside, especially, as I said, a lot of this market relies on Bitcoin, but if Bitcoin breaks 25K, then the strongest narratives, they're going to perform, and Lido is definitely one of them. So I would love to see a pullback into the 9.5, the 2.5, not 9.5, the 2.5 region, and that would be the bottom of the previous range. So this is definitely somewhere that I would be interested in buying Lido. Let's talk about Perp DEXs now for a second, because Perp DEXs are hot, and Perp DEXs are also one of the strongest performing sectors over the last 6 months, but we've continued to see forks and derivatives and new sort of Perp DEX iterations come into the market and perform quite strongly. So I want to give you my update on a few of the newer ones that I'm looking at, because, GMX has been fantastic. That's been a great trade. GNS has been amazing. Like, you guys know, I've been talking about that since, September last year, when it was $1.40. Now it's $10. It was also $14 last week. So GNS has probably been my best dollar trade of the last many, many months. So that's been a fantastic one, and congrats to everyone that was in GNS. But there is more opportunities in this space, and although it's getting more saturated and it's getting more vampire-y, and what I mean by vampire is we kind of have these vampire attacks of protocols trying to like suck liquidity out of other protocols by crazy emissions, and it's a very competitive market because there is just a lot of hype around this, and not only from the retail side, but also from the developer side. I feel like there's this FOMO to like create Perp DEXs right now, but I still think there's opportunities off the back of that, because you are seeing some genuine improvements on GNS and GMX starting to come to market. And also you're getting some deployments on chains which didn't have perp DEXs which needed them. For example, perp DEXs on Phantom and strong perp DEXs on BSC, whereas GMX and GNS, obviously Arbitrum and Polygon based, didn't really take advantage of those communities. So here are a couple of the new ones I'm seeing. Just keep in mind, I'm not going super heavy on these. This is just like little trades that I think could potentially perform well because perp DEXs have been hot, and if we get a Bitcoin breakout, I think they'll continue to perform well. So one of them is Vela. Vela's down 16% today, which is great because I wanted to buy this at $2, and I actually called it to one of my friends in a group chat at $2, and I didn't buy it, and I was feeling terrible when it was $8, but it has started to come down, which is good. And they do have an airdrop at the moment. So basically, if you want to get the airdrop, you can start trading on the Vela exchange. But we're seeing a lot of wash trading over there. And what this means is, a lot of people, like, say you've got $50,000, but you want an airdrop, that the more you trade, the bigger your airdrop's going to be. So instead of just letting your $50 sit in a wallet, you open like a super low leverage trade, or you open a high leverage trade and you instantly close it. Sure, you pay the fees in the short term, so you might lose $1,000, but you've washed $50K worth of trading volume through the platform, and on 5x leverage, that's actually $250,000 worth of trading volume through the platform. So we're seeing a lot of people wash trade. So yeah, put capital through, take a small loss on fees, but bolster up their trading numbers for a potential airdrop. So it is competitive, but if you do want to take part in the airdrop, like, I'm not going to tell you not to. You can if you want. I just don't think it's going to be massive now, because if you're starting now, you're starting late. But I still think there is a little opportunity here. But in terms of the Vela exchange airdrop, what we often see is airdrops come to market, dump a bunch of supply on the market, then we get that initial huge spike of hype, and then we get that dump. So like even Blur did this on a smaller time frame. It had that pump and then that dump. But more obvious examples would be Aptos. And another example of this would be Optimism, right? You did have that dump after the airdrop. So I think Vela has enough hype for this not to be a huge dump, but I still wouldn't buy pre-dump. So what I would look for is wait for the airdrop, and this is what I'm doing because I just don't want to FOMO in. I've learned my lesson FOMOing in the past. Won't do it again. Gonna wait for the airdrop. Gonna see how price consolidates. It may actually rally post airdrop, but that's okay. I'd rather buy into confirmation of, okay, the fundamentals here are strong in terms of technicals, instead of buying into kind of rampant speculation. So waiting for the airdrop there, and then Vela's one I'm looking at because it actually has a stronger community participants-wise than GMX. So more Discord and Telegram users. I mean, how much that really matters, I don't know, because a lot of people are airdrop farming, but, pretty strong presence on Twitter as well. So fairly big project and distinct UI advantages over some of its peers. Like, I can't deny the UI is solid, and that's one of the reasons why I'm looking at it. Second one, and this is extremely degen, but I thought I'd put it in anyway. This is MPX. It's a perp DEX on Phantom. I don't really know I mean, it's really hard to gauge how it's going to go post-launch. So, like, we just don't exactly know how the trading volume is going to pan out. I'm not seeing too much perp DEX stuff on Phantom. Of course, we have, like, Mummy Finance and a couple others. But, I just don't know how the community is going to take to it. So, it's a risky one. But for me, it's just super low market cap. And if you think Phantom can continue to perform well, then just off the back of the ecosystem, MPX is what I'm looking at. So it's got the perp DEX narrative. It's also got the Phantom narrative, and Phantom's been fairly strong in terms of price. If you guys want to know what's happening over at Phantom, on tomorrow's stream in exactly 24 hours, I'm going to have Michael Kong, the CEO of Phantom, on this show. So you're going to hear it from Michael Kong himself, what they're working on, what he's bullish on, what they're trying to fix, what the issues have been, everything. I'm going to ask him some tough questions as well. So make sure to tune in tomorrow for that update, because that'll give you a lot more clarity, I think, around the Phantom ecosystem. And I'm pretty excited as well to have a chat to Michael and see what's going in over at Phantom. The other perp DEX that I'm looking at is Level. Now, this is pretty similar to Vela, except kind of different in the sense that there is a lot of wash trading happening. But I think with Level, a lot of the volume also looks manipulated. So I am seeing claims on Twitter as oh, Level's doing more volume than GMX, more fees than GMX, and it's got 15 times less of the market cap. And that kind of is a very attractive proposition at face value, because you think, oh my God, I'm getting a 15 times better buying Level than GMX. But the thing is, like, it's being bootstrapped by emissions, right? So you can't really take that data and worship it. But what you can do is say, okay, maybe 90% of it's wash trading. It's still doing decent volume. It's still, it still looks solid. Maybe this is worth considering entering. It did also have some exploit, like a smaller type exploit over the last couple of weeks. That was something that did FUD the price. We need to see how the exploit plans out, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't actually buy any yet, because I'm waiting to see how that pans out, waiting to see how price settles, especially in the context of Bitcoin making a decision. But nonetheless, it's one on my watch list alongside Vela and MPX, because if some of that FUD starts to dissipate, we see bullish Bitcoin price action. I want to be in some of the Perp DEXs, and this is one of them, obviously being on BSC. So those are just a few. Once again, none of them I'm aping into now. None of them I'm actively buying today, just being fully transparent. These are ones I'm watching. Vela, post airdrop, MPX, phantom breakout. That's when I'll get into that, or significant dip, but still maintaining price structure. Of course, we'll talk about that tomorrow on the Phantom show. And then Level, waiting to see how some of the sentiment clears out around Twitter, and also waiting to see what exactly happens with the trading volume, and seeing if that starts to come down, or if emissions are still enough to keep people on the platform for the next month or two. But that's what I'm looking at. The next narrative I'm looking at is Chinese coins. I've got two more to share with you. And, we've been talking about these for a while as well, but I think it's important to update you guys on what the plan is, because the plans change when we get market movements, and plans change when sentiment changes and prices change. So it's important to keep you guys updated. The Chinese coin narrative has been extremely strong, obviously for a couple of reasons. The first reason being China had its biggest injection of liquidity into its economy in a single day in history. So it's the biggest injection they've ever had in a single day, of $92 billion worth of USD into the market on Friday. Now, if we compare this to the US, which is doing 60 billion in QT per month, then China is printing more money, or injecting more money into the economy in a single day than the US is tapering, so taking out of the economy in a single month, which is pretty damn crazy. And that's basically the catalyst for why Chinese coins started running. And then you also have the second catalyst, which is Hong Kong being like China's closest counterpart in terms of a jurisdiction, legalizing crypto trading. So they started with institutional trading, and now they're starting to open it up to retail clients. So that is pretty huge for the Chinese narrative, and that's why it pumped. And look, you really can't fade it. So me saying you can't fade it doesn't mean, okay, let's ape in now. Oh my God, let's ape in after a 5x. No. What I'm saying is, one, you can't short it. You just can't. Well, at least not yet, because there's just too much hype around this, too much speculation around this. Like, who knows? We could get news next week that China injects another 90 billion, and then these will run again. It's similar to AI. You can't short it. What you can do, though, is take profits. And what you can do, though, is trade these coins. So these aren't long-term holds for me. A lot of these fundamentals are extremely dubious. No way I want to hold CFX long-term. No way I want to hold NEO long-term. Freaking NEO's coming in the news again. Or Clayton, or any of these, right? They're not 2-3 year holds. Like, I'll hold Arweave long-term. I'll hold Ethereum long-term. I'll hold MATIC long-term. I'm not holding these long-term. Let's just get that very, very straight. But, in terms of if we get a Bitcoin breakout, and if we see corresponding breakouts on the Chinese altcoins, yes, I will get into shorter-term entries on these, because of one thing: they have relative strength. And you don't fight the trend of the market. It's that simple. So no, I'm not aping into prices after huge pumps. That's dumb. But I will consider trading some of these when we get breakouts. And similarly, if I'm buying altcoins on massive dips, then I'll look to buy a little bit of Chinese exposure on some dips. It's really that simple. There's no need to overcomplicate it. But always keep in mind time frame when it comes to holding these projects, because I don't want anyone aping in at the top and then, in a year's time complaining that their bag's worth zero. It's like, no, you got to differentiate time frames between different investments. Narrative-based trading is often shorter time-based trading. You don't trade narratives the same way that you trade long-term accumulation. There are narratives that can last long-term. Maybe GMX ends up being a really, really good long-term hold, even though it's under the Perp DEX narrative. But there's no way to determine that. And you have to use your own discretion to determine what is and what isn't a long-term investment. For me, China isn't a long-term investment. But you've got Filecoin now starting to retrace. I don't mind Filecoin at the 7.8K region. Cocos, this is one that really pumped. If we get a massive pullback, maybe you consider that one as well. Of course, you can do it on the pullback or the breakout of Bitcoin, one or the other. You've also got CFX. I think this is probably the most synonymous Chinese coin, but since it's so synonymous with the Chinese narrative, it has also pumped the most. We've seen a huge extension, which has resulted in 500% gains, which is like a 6x, which is absolutely crazy. You've also got VET, more of an like an English side coin, but also has China supply chain ties. So yeah, I just look at a few of these. This is my list. Feel free to screenshot. I also posted this on Twitter. Keep an eye on some of these coins. If we get a huge pullback, you can start looking at some of these. A lot of these aren't really ready yet. They just haven't pulled back enough for my liking, or there's just not enough confirmation on Bitcoin for my liking to ape into these. But certainly keep your eye on them. If I am tooting my own horn, I did tweet these a few days ago, and a lot of them have 4x since. I got Cocos at like 20 cents. I have been trading some of these, but I'm not in like crazy spot positions, just more short-term trades. Yeah, called this like maybe not 20 cents, was it? I don't know. It was like $1 or something. It was when it was way less. And I think I got most of these as well on my Twitter. So that was a really good call, and I'm happy with that. But at the same time, like, we have to stay pragmatic in how we approach this in the future. Now, the next narrative I want to talk about, and the last one of today's video, and then at the end, I'm going to get into a few questions, because I'm sure you guys probably have questions based on what I've been talking about, is GambleFi. So I just want to mention GambleFi is something I'm looking at. It's something I'm researching. If you are interested in Perp DEXs, and you also understand the need for similar style on-chain interaction, but in the form of gambling, so not trading, then I would consider you don't need to become an expert, but I would consider at least starting to learn a lot more about this stuff, because this is going to be huge in the future. I don't know if it's now, don't know if it's next week or next month. I don't know if it's even in the next 6 months, but I know at some point we're going to see an on-chain casino which explodes, and I'm always keeping my lookout for the one that potentially becomes the next GMX of casinos, right? So I'm not aping into these now, but one, they are quite hot in the short term, to be perfectly honest, and two, long term, there's also potential here. So I'm always looking at potential opportunities in this space. 𝗏𝗏𝗃 is a great guy to follow if you want to keep up to date with this stuff. But I will also, of course, keep you up to date on these shows as well. And the ones that I am seeing right now, of course, you got Arcadium and JustBet. They're very hyped. I'm waiting for a much bigger pullback on Arcadium. JustBet looks okay. You've got a couple casinos in Arbitrum. To be honest, nothing looks amazing. So right now, there aren't many great products. You can speculate on the ones that are currently out, but none of them look amazing. You've got bets as well. I would just wait and see how the space starts to develop. And it's developing very quickly. And then we'll start making some decisions on GambleFi. But look, you can get some short-term exposure if you really, really want to ride this narrative. But at the same time, just note that a lot of these projects are super early stage, and long term, there's going to be much better iterations. But GambleFi, I think, is going to be huge. And this is one that I'm heavily researching and investing as kind of that next rotation after, what we saw with Perp DEXs as well. So now that we've talked about some narratives, I want to give you some alpha in terms of how to actually trade narratives. Because, I do see a lot of confusion and mix-ups on YouTube and Twitter about how to approach some of these really strong trends in the market. And, the word narrative actually has started to annoy me because it's so overused, and I feel like I'm saying it all the time, and I wish there was a synonym, but there's just not really many good synonyms for narrative. It's one of the limitations of the English language. The closest thing I can think of is trend. Storyline isn't even really applicable. So I guess what narratives are trends, right? So they're really popular topics in the market that gain steam based on either an upcoming catalyst or announcement. So in order to take advantage of them, because they change a lot, and to be honest, this is the most volatile I've ever seen the narrative rotation. There's 8 every single week, which just pop up out of nowhere. So this is actually quite a hard one to trade at the moment. It's a hard game. It might sound easy when someone like me comes up here and just talks about narratives, but look, in reality, it is a hard game. We have to accept that. But there are a few simple steps that I boiled down on my Twitter post to help you guys. So firstly, you got to spot that. You got to spot an upcoming event or news-based catalyst. So there's 2 ways you can do this, right? Upcoming major event might be like, oh, the World Cup's in 6 months. Let's look at fan tokens. It might be as simple as that. Or an upcoming event might be, oh, Polygon's got ZK-EVM. Let's look at related ZK-EVM protocols. All right? Or it can be a news-based catalyst. So the major event stuff's preemptive, so you're looking into the future. The news-based catalyst is a present strategy. So it's basically, okay, there's huge news that just broke. How can I act most efficiently on that news? For example, I don't know, FTX collapses. 10% of the market now, or the trading volume in the market's going to need to go somewhere. Where does it go? I think some goes into DEXs. Let me get into the Perp DEXs. And that is one of the reasons why that narrative continued to perform strongly. post FTX. So there's news-based catalysts, which is something happens and you think about, okay, what's the cause and effect? Crypto is all about cause and effect. And then there's upcoming events of you look forward into the future and then you backtrack to work out the cause and effect. So there's two ways you can do it. The second one is identifying the related tokens. So that is going, okay, FTX collapsed. What are the best DEXs? Or it's going, okay, the World Cup's in a few months. What are the best fan tokens? So you can kind of start to look at beneficiaries based on current events and catalysts. But also, you really have to be a critical thinker when it comes to beneficiaries, because oftentimes it isn't as simple as, oh, Polygon 𝗟𝗍𝗫M's coming out, let me long MATIC. Well, it's not that simple, because what actually ended up happening with the ZK stuff was MATIC wasn't the one that ran percentage-wise. The ones that ran were the boring ZK protocols that had done nothing for months, but now had a reason to run. Like, I guess you could put MINA into that category, Loopring into that category, Syscoin into that category, Dusk into that category, Mute. These protocols that weren't Polygon, they were kind of indirect beneficiaries. And they ended up performing very, very strongly. So you have to look a step further. Often, the best performers are one step removed from what you think will be the best performer. But also don't try and overcomplicate things. Because narratives in crypto, they have to be easy enough for retail to understand. And if retail understands those narratives, then they're going to act on them. But if it's too complicated for the average trader to invest in, they're going to find it very hard to act on. So there's a fine line between picking a protocol that retail is going to understand as being a beneficiary and trying to get too tricky with yourself and trying to predict something that's like 5 steps removed. Like going, oh, MATIC's launching. Okay, let me look at a ZK EVM protocol. Oh, but that's not enough. Let me look at like a ZK layer 3 protocol that's like building AI or something. Like you just try and get too crazy. It's better to be simple with narrative trading, but go one step removed. So I think that's like the balance, but each narrative is going to have a different balance, right? 3, look for an uptick in fundamentals. If you want to be early to the narratives, you got to get in during the upticks. So you don't want to be buying in after the huge pumps. You want to be buying in as they're starting to take off, or if they've taken off and then they've gotten their first major pullback. Now, uptick in fundamentals isn't necessarily price action. It can be. And of course, I would use everything in conjunction with price action. But looking for an uptick in fundamentals is actually like going on to DeFi Llama and looking at the TVL growth. Going on to June Analytics and looking at the staking deposit growth. Seeing if there's an uptick in trading volume. There's all sorts of tools we can use to look at fundamental data, right? That's the first thing I look at. The second one is social metrics, because narratives, that they're called narratives because of how they impact the social side of crypto. So what I mean by this is how much they're being talked about on Twitter. Are they being talked about on TikTok? Are they being talked about on Instagram? Now, the easiest way to look at this uptick would be just to go onto Lunar Crush. Get a Lunar Crush account, research the protocol. So once you've done step 1 and 2 and you've got the projects, now it's time to look for the uptick in fundamentals and social metrics. So going on to Lunar Crush can tell you, okay, is it being talked about? If you've got your ear to the ground and you're like me, and you're in a lot of Twitter groups, Twitter lists, Discord groups, you're going to see what's starting to get the buzz. Now, it's important to not get the buzz after everyone's gotten the buzz. And it's important to get the buzz. I mean, if you want max gains, of course, like, for example, China right now, everyone's talking about it, but there might still be gains just because it's so hot, right? Similar with AI, everyone was talking about it, but you still got gains because it was so hot. But the gains that you get are less now, except that although you might still be able to make money trading Chinese coins, you're not getting that 10x that you would have gotten a month ago. You're just not. So when I'm talking about narrative trading, I'm talking about being able to find them here. So although this may do this, that's only from here a 35% move. Yeah, leverage trading, you can make 200-300%. That's amazing. But, I say only, but if you're trying to catch those big gains, you're better off getting it here and finding them early and then looking for that 400% upside instead of just trying to get that last little bit. So although narrative trading, current big narratives can get you this last push up, and it maybe even gets you a 5x if you pick the smaller projects and follow the rotation from large caps to small caps, it's still better if you identify them early. So that's why Lunar Crush is really good, because you can see when people start talking about it, and all you're looking for is a positive development in the trend. You're not looking for a huge spike, because that probably means you've missed it. You're not looking for everyone talking about it. you're not waiting till your whole feed's Mandarin. You're waiting for the event to happen, identifying the beneficiaries, and then seeing a small uptick. And that's often the better time to position yourself in a new narrative. But sometimes it's better, honestly, to miss the first 50% move and solidify, okay, this actually is going to be a strong narrative, than try and speculate on something that isn't. Because you can make claims for anything. I can sit here and say, oh, Near Protocol is the next narrative because it's got this and it's got that and it's got this and they've got a hackathon and that's the next narrative and it hasn't run. Oh my God, let me get in now because that hasn't run. That might not necessarily work because there's no validation for me that the public's going to adopt this narrative. It's just in my own head, right? So you need some sort of substantive basis in terms of social metrics to work out, okay, this is actually a thing now, let's get in. So sometimes it's better waiting a little bit. You don't want to wait till the end, but you want to wait a little bit to see how things settle. Then fourth is obviously following the large, mid, small cap rotation. So large caps run first, mid caps run second, small caps run third. Sometimes small caps front run large caps if it's a super speculative niche. But in general, it does work like this. Even with the AI narrative, it worked like that. With the gaming run, it worked like that. With the Chinese coins, roughly, it worked like that. CFX and some of these bigger ones went first. Filecoin and some of the bigger ones went first, and then people went, oh, they've already run. How can I still make money? Oh, let's get into small caps. And then some of the small caps started exploding. So even if you've missed a big narrative, you can still... So let's say like you missed AI, right? And this was more relevant last week than it is now, but let's say, okay, I've missed the AI narrative. The large caps have run. The mid caps are starting to run. Let me preemptively get into some small caps now. That's an okay way to trade a narrative. If you miss this initial couple steps, if you miss this initial bit, then you can trade the rotation. But I think it's always better, obviously in an ideal world, to nail these steps and then follow the rotation as well of taking profits into some smaller caps as well as stables. That can be a great way to take advantage of a narrative. And 5 is making sure you sell when everyone jumps on the train. When it's all over your feed, take profits. Keep a moon bag. For example, if you got into Chinese altcoins a week ago and you're up 5x, obviously your initial's out now. Obviously you've taken, let's say 70, 80% of your profits, but keep that 20% in just because, if it keeps running, you never know when it's going to stop. Stay on board the train for another stop, but, drop off some of your luggage along the way, basically. So make sure to sell enough on the way, but, stay on for the ride. And if it all goes to shit, in that last stop, then it's okay. You still got most of your money out. So make sure you are selling when everyone gets super hyped about something. Now, of course, it's not a foolproof game. It's extremely difficult to contextualize or at least put into practice what some of these like broader pieces of advice are. Like if I'm saying, oh, make sure to sell when everyone jumps on the train. Yeah, I admit it is hard to know when everyone jumps on the train, right? There's no 100% success rate metric which is going to tell you that a narrative's over. There's no success rate. Like there's no 100% thing that tells you China's done, AI's done, LSDs are done. You're not going to know until it's actually over, till it's over. But the more experience you get trading these trends, the more experience you get on the technical side, so being able to substantiate technical moves with fundamentals, and the more involved you are in these circles, you're going to see when momentum's slowing down. So this is something you get better at over time. So step number 5, you're not going to be amazing at right away, but you actually need to play the game to get good at the game. You can't just read the textbook and then ace the test. You need to do some practice tests before you can ace the test. And that is exactly what it's like in crypto. So the only way you're going to know when the time to sell is once you're on your 5th narrative and you've gotten really, really, really good at playing the game, and then it becomes easier. And you're still going to make screw-ups, and you're still not going to buy and things are going to pump, and you're still going to not take profits and things are going to dump, right? It's still going to happen, but your percentage success rate significantly increases. So that's my crypto narrative trading playbook. Feel free to take a screenshot. I hope it helps. And of course, there's much nuance that goes in between each of these steps, but I think it is relevant, for a lot of people to help you guys trade some of these narratives. Now, since a lot of these altcoins aren't actually on centralized exchanges that I just talked about, some are, some aren't. You can use KyberSwap, which is an amazing DEX aggregator, which is going to find you the lowest fees. So, for example, GNS isn't on every exchange. MPX isn't on every exchange. So you can simply go into the chain that you want to get a token on, click on that chain. So for example, Arbitrum, I want to put USDC into GNS. What it's going to do is it's going to find the cheapest trade route. So it's going from staked ETH into wrapped ETH into GNS using Balancer and Uniswap because it worked out. If I use this route, I'm going to save you some money. I'm going to just save you 6 cents in this case, but in some cases it's up to like $20, $30, especially if it's on Ethereum where gas is super high. I'm going to just reroute it. See how quickly it rerouted? Every single second it works out. Actually, no, now this is the cheapest price. Now this is the cheapest price. So it's going to give you the best rate at any given time, which is why I really, really like KyberSwap. And obviously they are a show sponsor now, which I'm really happy about. So link in the description if you want to use KyberSwap. It's also kyberswap.com if you want to swap anything on a DEX, because we have great centralized options, of course, Bybit, BitGet, and OKX, but you're not always going to have the option to trade some of these altcoins. So if you do need a DEX to do it, KyberSwap's a great DEX to do so. And there's obviously a link in the description to that, as well as OKX for your mystery box and BitGet and Bybit for the Rolex giveaways. Let me answer some questions now in the comments to, just wrap up this show. Not financial advice, of course, 100%. None of this is financial advice. It is, it's actually, and maybe you're being sarcastic, but I'm not. It's more so to kind of point you guys in the mindset to become a better trader and a better investor. And no, any given call in this video, I can't be 100% sure of. I think if anyone tells themselves they're 100% sure of a trade, they're kidding themselves. All we can do is get enough experience to have a higher percentage hit rate that over time makes you money. And that's really what this game's about. It's about EV, taking positive expected value trades. And if they pan out, you make money. If they don't, they don't. But if you take enough plus EV trades over time, you're going to make money. Let's go after more. Let's see what other people are asking. Drop any questions if you want. Hong Kong narrative next. Lena IMO. I saw a great tweet which had a lot of Hong Kong things. There are some Hong Kong, because Hong Kong's legalizing crypto, obviously. There are some tokens that may get Hong Kong listings before others. But I wouldn't say it's next. I'd say they're already kind of running, quite a lot. Someone said AVAX, Rune, or Sol. Chart-wise, Sol, I think, is the more immediate long. Long-term, Sol is probably my favorite hold there. Followed by... I'm not fading Rune, and I'm not fading AVAX, but probably more so Rune than AVAX. But look, if you're going to build a long-term L1 portfolio, you can have both. Like, really, it's not a question of which one should I choose, but more of a question of, how do I allocate? Because definitely, AVAX is starting to tick up a little bit. They had their Amazon partnership, $22 still a key region for AVAX, and then obviously Solana, probably the better short-term trade. But to be honest, risk-reward-wise, I prefer Sol. That's just personal, though. Like, I think all of them can, be decent, right? Solidly Forks. Thoughts? Well, if you go onto DeFi Llama, and you go onto DeFi and then click Forks. So this is a little bit of a tip for you. And then you click Solidly, and obviously you've got forks of basically every big dApp. You're going to see some of the forks that are starting to gain traction. Now, which ones do I like? Equal and Thena are my favorite. So these are the two that I'd look at. They're actually on my accumulation list. I didn't talk about them today just because I just don't think I'm ready to accumulate them. But I'm looking at Equal. I'm looking at Thena. Velodrome looks okay, but I'm not sold. That's on Optimism. And there's also a few other ones which are starting to tick up. Like this one, I've never heard of it. But look, over the last month, it's gone up 440%. Over the last day, it's up 84%. So sometimes I think a good thing to do, and I'll actually look at this after the show because this is how I research, is go into DeFi Llama, see what's ticking up. Oh my God, this trend just has completely broken out or completely shown a huge uptick. What's going on here? Let me work out what's going on. So that might be an indication to further research. But of course, it's only got $12,000, so the percentages are skewed. So, I might look at something like Arkley or Spartacus. I don't know. I'm just naming random protocols. They're likely shitcoins, but the whole point of using DeFi Llama is to spot new trends, right? But I think Equalizer, Thena, probably the two best there. People are asking about Gala. Let me just give you a TA perspective first. Obviously, fundamentally, long-term, I like it. It's fairly dilutive, so it's not like something I'm buying now. More something I'll look probably Q3, Q4, maybe in line with my macro thesis. I'll long-term spot accumulate Gala. In terms of a short-term trade, I don't know. I'm not that interested right now, just price-wise, but I think long-term it's good. I will definitely buy it at some point. It's just not right now. Personally, doesn't mean you shouldn't. It's up to you, of course, but and your thesis. But for me, prefer to play into the strength here and prefer to do my long-term spot buys later on after we see a massive correction. Long-term buying spot into resistance is like dumb. Long-term trading on breakouts. Short-term trading on breakouts, smart. Long-term buying spot into resistance / on a breakout is dumb. Like, you're better off waiting for a massive pullback. Much love, Joby. Thanks for hanging out. You're a regular over here, which is cool. 𝗟𝗲𝗍, Singapore. Yes, it is. I'm not a fan of it fundamentally. I know Sheldon loves to chart the thing, but I can't give you an opinion on it fundamentally, to be honest, because I just don't really get it. It's just another L1. And there's seems to be like a million L1s now that continuously pop up. Also, remember, if you want to keep yourself safe in terms of trading, because if you're going to use DeFi, you need to be safe. And to be honest, I wouldn't tell you to do this, but if you're in a country that doesn't allow certain exchanges, a VPN can help. But obviously, never, ever break the law. But if you do want to trade on a DEX, you do have NordVPN, link in the description. $6 a month to protect your identity is not a bad deal. Like, let's be honest with each other. $6 to protect thousands of dollars in your wallet is not a bad deal at all. Also, you can watch some cool movies from overseas. That's actually, to be honest, like, I go on about the DeFi security stuff, but probably the coolest part of a VPN is getting to watch movies overseas. Like, let's be honest. But anyway, it's gonna keep you safe in DeFi. That's like, we got to follow the script. Yeah, Brad, it is good. It's good. Like, you've got Surfshark as well, but I think Nord is probably my favorite. All right, guys. Well, until we get a huge move from Bitcoin here, I'm gonna head off. But I'll see you tomorrow for show with Michael Kong, the CEO of Phantom. That's gonna be awesome. So for all you Phantom guys and girls, hopefully you like that show. It's gonna give a lot of, I think, insight into what is happening with the upcoming FVM in Q3. So I'll see you in 24 hours. Until then, I hope you guys have a lovely, lovely day, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.